So this period of time that we're in is called Sefiras Omer, and I'm sure you're familiar with Sefiras Omer and the ideas that that go around with it. But okay, so we've shared the screen with the textual source for Sefiras Omer. Sefiras Omer we learn from the Torah. The verse says, "Sefartem lachem," and you shall count, or "Sefartem lachem," you shall count for yourself. Mamachas Shabbos, from the period of time that's defined by Mamachas Shabbos, which is the day of Miyem Haviyachim. You bring the korb, the Emer Tznufa, the wave havers, and you count that for 7 weeks. And you count for a period of 7 weeks, and tmimim tiyeno, and they should be complete. And the other textual verse, Shiva Shabbos Tisvalachem, for 7 weeks you shall count it. Okay, so from that verse itself, we understand that it's something which needs to be processed and counted, and we understand that there's a process about it, and it's reflected in the halacha. Of how we actually count. Okay, there is a famous of teachings on the idea of the Sefiras Omer, the idea of that we count the 50 days, but what do we do in that 50-day period, or the 49 period, or the 7 by 7, 49th period? What we do is that we make ourselves Sefartem. We make ourselves count, and that can be understood on a number of ways. And we look towards the root of the word for what the explanation of the word Sefartem means. So the Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, in his seminal work in Likutei Torah, uses the idea that we want to, in the process of the Sefartem, of counting the days, we want to be able to personally come to a level of shining, of giving forth, of lighting. So Sefartem then means that within the processes, within the mitzvah of Sefiras Omer, we come out and we light up, we cause to shine through this process of Sefiras Omer. So in that idea of coming to shine and coming to light up, we want to understand how we can do that. How do we go about it? Right? So if we go back to that source text, and we look at it again, we see that it says, "Sefartem lachem," you'll count to yourself, and in our way we're translating it. Well, we're going to go through the process of sphera, from the expression of light up, like a bright stone shining. We're going to become shining sources of bright light, lochem, for you. And it's going to start Mamachras Shabbos, and it's going to start from the Machras Shabbos, It's going to start from this the day from when we brought the Omer sacrifice, and that's going to start the processes. So then we have to I have to understand and dig deeper. How does the Mochras Shabbos, how does the Mochras, which in this case Shabbos means the Yontiv of Pesach, how does the Yontiv of Pesach help us in the process that we're going to become the shining people? And further, if we want, we want to be able to be a example and shining example, we need to do that not just in this period, but we want to do it for the whole year, right? We want to have that process ongoing, so that it's ongoing for the entire time, rather than just for that small amount. Okay. So we talk about a specific idea that the Jewish person, his purpose in life, and his role is that he has to be, as we talk about a light unto the other nations, and we have and in terms of being created, a person has to be with the idea that his whole purpose and his role in this world is that he has to serve his creator, and furthermore serve his place in the world, so that he can make this place in his world, his place in the world, as the expression is, to make a dwelling place below for godliness. So that is part of his role. So that job doesn't stop after 49 days. That job is a ongoing challenge. Where does a person take that capability from? And in order to do that process, a person has to refine himself by removing from himself the negative aspects of himself, and he has to refine the physical world around him. And after all, that's the idea of being a shining light, the idea of bringing light to a light everywhere. So therefore, we understand that the verse has given us a commandment to physically count the days, and we're counting the days. But in that process of counting the days, we're refining the world around us and our relationship to the world and the world around us, so that we're actually shining. So in that case, what's it connected to? The idea of Sefartem lechem lamochras Shabbos. What's the connection to the idea of the day of Yom Tov, the day of Pesach, and in particular to the idea of Pesach specifically? And at the end of the verse, we showed that second verse, right? That the second verse, which explicates the idea of 7 weeks, and it asks for that 7 week period. So, as in that second verse, it says Sheva Shabbos Tispra L'cho, so the 7 weeks you shall count for yourself, right? And that's the process that we have to go through. These the 7 weeks of working through our endeavors, so that we can go to our eventual conclusion, which is to serve Hashem in the mountain where He wants to be served. That is, at the time when we're given the Torah at Har Sinai. So this process, this requirement, really was something that started at the going out of Egypt, and it was a preparation for the giving of the Torah, the Matan Torah. But it appears that, and we can understand that, because it's for the ultimate purpose of Matan Torah, of the receiving the Torah, that it's not just that this was a preparatory stage to Matan Torah, but in fact it was more than that. It wasn't just a preparation, but it was in actual fact parts of the process of Matan Torah. Part of the process of receiving the Torah is that we should go through the processes of Sefartem, in our understanding, lighting up. And that process is the process which Torah gives us, which is not just an enabler for the receiving of the Torah, but is a process of and a part of the receiving of the Torah. So we're going to examine that and understand understand that. And so classically we can understand some of the explanations and explanations which relate to the receiving of the Torah and the counting of the days prior to that, that we are counting them for the purpose of showing that we are readying ourselves and wait in anticipation for the event of receiving the Torah. And in fact, as explained by the classical commentators of Rabbeinu Nissim a major commentator on the Gemara at the end of the Gemara Pesachim, that the reason why the Bnei Yisrael counted the Sefiras Omer was because they were waiting in great excitement and anticipation for the reception of their constitution that would be given to them, their constitution with God that would be given to them at the Mount Sinai. So therefore we can look at the days which were leading up to Matan Torah, not just as a preparation, but an actual fact, initial stages of receiving the Torah. And that can then explain the idea of counting the days towards Sefiras Omer to the Shavuos, the 49 days, but even more so, as we gave the explanation at the beginning, that the verse when it says Sefartem lachem, acts as a positive mitzvah, a positive activity, a strong positive activity, so that we can go towards and achieve the goal, the fullest realization of receiving the Torah through the days of Sefira. And even though these are in some respects days where we're working towards the receiving of the Torah, Matan Torah, nevertheless, these are steps in the actual fulfillment of receiving of the Torah. So therefore, we can say, as we said at the beginning, that what's the translation of Sefartem? Sefartem means to shine, to actively shine, to actually actively work on the idea of being a source of light. The 50th day of the 50th day, that's actually not part of the count, because that's the culmination of everything. So as we said, the 50th day, that'll be the end of the count. But we count to the 50th day, but that's the culmination. But the process of going towards it, shining and refining the world, comes through what we're working through by doing the counting of the 7 days of the 49 days, the 7 weeks, and the 7 days of every week till we come to the last day, the 49th day, and then the next day is the 50th day, and that's when the Jews received and culminated in receiving the Torah. So, as that is the understanding, we have to understand further. We have to understand further what's the process that we go through every day, because every day has to be a different day, and as we're told, that every day is a new spiritual service, and we can examine the processes of every day to understand where a person can go to, and that can allow him to do some sort of preparation for the Sefartem, but through the shining, to the ultimate state that he can do. But he's working through those days. Does a person come to the 50th day, which is the day of Shur, so the culmination, the receiving of the Torah, which is the ultimate purpose of it all. So we talked about at the beginning the idea of looking at the root of the word, or looking at a meaning of the word, or where this word comes from. Sefartem meaning counting. But if you look in further in the understandings of words, we can find that the word Sefartem can be understood in 4 different ways. And what we're going to do is to enumerate these 4 different ways, and then see and understand and appreciate how those 4 different ways, 4 different meanings within the word, can relate to our connectivity and connection that we make with Hashem. And then that allows us and gives us a path, a ladder up, to come to the highest, to the level where we can say that we can be worthy, where we can receive the Torah, and where we can say that we we come to the culminating point of the 50th day. Because each one of those 4 levels can represent a stage in our personal development. And then in our personal development, we can understand how we can trace and connect to godliness and make ourselves more godly, and then thereby becoming that example of what we said, of a shining light. So one translation that's brought for the word for Sefartem in its root of the word, one usage of the word can be of the idea of mispar, of a count. So that's the translation that we've used, and that we use standardly. So to count, we have to count the 49 days. When we think about this word, about counting, it gives us an idea that counting, what does it do? It defines and it constrains. When I count, I say 1 but not 2. When I count 2, it's not 3, or it's this unit plus less unit. It's a constrained count. So in that constrainedness, this teaches that we can have a connective point to godliness through constraints. There's another translation that teaches us of an idea in the translation of the word, that the root of the word can be used as to say, to tell a story, masaprim, to count, which is what we do in Pesach time, in the Haggadah, where we masapa, we tell the story of the going out of Egypt. We also use that expression when we use this word to tell a story, sipur. We can use it in the term of sipur v'haggadah, as I said, to tell over an event, or like we do in the Pesach service, to the point that we call the Pesach service as a fulfillment of the verse, "Ikara levincha," that you should tell your children. So we tell over the narrative. It can also be used as in usage in Psalms, in verse number 9, in chapter 19, verse 2. We have the expression, we talk about the glory of God. Masaprim kaved kael. We speak about the glory of God. We can speak over and teach. We can speak over and convey the greatness and the gloriousness, the awesomeness of godliness. So when we do that, where we can self-arouse and arouse to others, and have the honor and glory of God on us at that time. There's another translation of the word. We can use that word as in the usage of the term sefer, as the expression is a book on Rosh Hashanah. We talk about that there, and the Gemara uses the expression that in the times in the holy time of Rosh Hashanah, there are the three books open in front of Hashem, and those three books, the book of as expressed, the book of life, and opposite, right, and the three books are open up in front of Hashem, and those three books, as the Talmud mentions in Tractate Rosh Hashanah on 16b, it talks about the three books are open in front of Hashem. So these books tell a story, but they also contain a story, and they contain details. It contains facts. It contains a lot of information, and that can be part of our dialogue with Hashem, to understand, like in the book, to understand the academics, to understand the greatness of Hashem. And a third expression, a fourth expression that we have in the usage of the word, of this root of the word, to count, is also the idea of Even Sapir, a brilliant stone, meaning a diamond or a gem that shines because of its brilliance. And its brilliance might not just be captured light, but it enhances and it shows on the brilliance of light that cannot be seen at first glance, but needs the facility of the brilliant stone, of the tool that's embedded, the characteristics that are embedded in the crystal, to bring out and to reveal the brilliance of the light around us that we don't necessarily understand or see, and it just gives us a brilliance of light. These four translations that we've discussed, or we've just given, are three modes and four modes and four capabilities in how we can utilize the commandment that we've been given of counting the Omer for us. Okay, so with that as an idea, let's delve into a little bit more detail with it. How do I utilize, how can I engage with these four translations and make myself a better person, or at least examine myself and understand myself in a more confined way, to understand how I can connect to God in a stronger sense. Okay. The first translation that we gave of Sefartem was the idea of counting, the simple translation, the translation that we use in the Chumash. We're counting the day by really counting the day and saying, well, this is the first day, not the second day, or this is the second day, not the third day. And we're delineating. In that, when we count a day, well, what we've said is that this is, on the one hand, it's limited and it's constrained. It's just the one day. It's this specific day. It's the fourth day, the fifth day. And therefore, it doesn't have the capabilities of the other day. Nevertheless, it has the advantages. It has a very specific advantage, as explained via the Torah and in the realm of halacha, that when something's counted, it's not nullified. Now, it's a little bit of a branch off to explain that idea. And what we're doing over here is to just show you the unity of the Torah, how we can unify a concept that exists in halacha, in practical activity, to the ethics and the philosophies in Torah. So in halacha, we have this idea that when something is counted, it doesn't become nullified and therefore contains and is something of its own personal substance. So the example that's given in halacha as the prototype typical is a bunch of eggs. When you sell eggs in the marketplace, you sell them by a container. That container would have a constrained fixed number, an itemized number of eggs inside it, a box of eggs. And that box of eggs, it's well known that there might be 10, 12, but it's a defined amount of eggs in the container, as opposed to when I sell a bag of sugar, I don't know one kernel of sugar from the other, not just because they're so small, because it's sold by weight, 1 kilogram, right? or whatever sizes you might sell it with. Right? You sell it as a defined, but each kernel is not separated out. It's not a defined kernel, or a bunch of nuts. Right? You know, if you buy a bag of peanuts, you're purchasing a bag. Each nut is not unique in itself, even though they're separate and they're very divisible. You can see them, right? You can count them out, and you could count them, but we don't. But when it comes to eggs, as an example, right? You'll count out 1, 2, 3, 10 eggs in the box, 12 eggs in the box, whatever it might be. So once you're counting, the halacha concept is that I no longer look at the container and say that everything's nullified within the container itself and becomes just a bag of sugar, a bag of nuts. But I look at it and count it as 12 eggs. Going back to our example, the same thing happens with the days. Each day is an important day. Each day is not nullified. Each day can do its role in the specific requirements that we need to do. So when we look at counting the days, we can understand that we need to count the days and make each day a meaningful day, and each day a counted day towards our progression to the state of revelation, or a state of receiving the Torah, receiving our connection with godliness. So that's one level of understanding, of one of many levels of understanding that we can have in the idea of translating this word, the word or Sefartem, and therefore translating the mitzvah, the requirement of what we should be doing in our connection to Hashem, through the mitzvah of Sefartem, through its translation as the idea of counting. The other translation that I gave, which is a further level in appreciation and connecting to godliness. We talked about that we can translate the word of this counting as per used to tell a story, to tell a narrative, to talk about the greatness of God, to reveal. Let's just move our thoughts in a bit of a different form, and to say that when we speak a narrative, when we say a story, when we immerse ourselves in a story, we find that our whole being, our emotions, our entity gets absorbed in that story. And that is how we explain the mitzvah of talking about the Seder, talking about the narrative, the Maggid section in our Pesach Seder. Our desired goal in the Pesach environment, in the Pesach Seder, is that by saying the story, we relive and we feel the whole emotions of going out of Egypt. We relive the slavery, and we relive the emancipation of the Jewish nation. We live the pain and anguish that our forefathers had in Egypt, and then we relive the emancipation and the feeling of gratitude, to the point that at the end of the Maggid section, the narrative section of the Seder, we fill our cups with wine, and we speak about the glory of Hashem, and we sing praises of Hashem. Hence, and you will recall that we have the first two passages of our traditional Hallel prayer, the singing of praises to Hashem, embedded in the Maggid section of the Haggadah service, so that we complete the narrative section of the Maggid section. We complete the narrative section of the Pesach experience by reliving it and coming to the point where we sing the praises of Hashem by singing the verses of praise, which we call Hallel. And then we culminate with drinking the cup of wine over the blessings of gratitude that we have. What's that an example of? That's an example of saying the story. That's example of saying the story and recounting the glory of Hashem, like we said from that verse, from Psalms 19, verse 2, Mesaprim Kaveh Kel. We speak about the glory of Hashem. So also, we have this capability of connecting and dialoguing to Hashem and fulfilling the counting and our movement towards Hashem via our counting, via our speaking out, and by counting translated as the speaking out and saying the narrative of our expressions of gratitude to Hashem. And that's how we're Masaprim Kel. That's how we do the Sefartem. That's how we do the counting to Hashem via this speaking of of godliness. And in fact, there's no secret to it. That's what we do in our daily prayers. We evoke the emotions and our feelings of gratitude by speaking out the verses of prayers, which is the second section, which is the second section of the 4 sections of prayers, of our daily prayers. And we do that, and we do that in its fullest measure. And we communicate and we commune with Hashem and through that. So that's the second stage of the usage of the word Mesaprim. We had a third translation. And the third translation was from the word Sefer, from the idea of book, that within the book is contained all the details. What does it mean within a book is contained all the details? What do I mean by that? And what does the verse mean by that? What does the verse want to teach us with that? The idea that we have is that in that idea that we have a book and we have the content of all of Hashem contained in a book, is that we connect to Hashem through understanding his wisdom that is given to us. What is that? That is all our holy writings. God, who is infinite, has revealed himself in the sense that he has passed on his wisdom to us. And as explained in the chapters in the basic fundamental, when I said basic, I don't mean simple, I mean fundamental. In the fundamental works of the teachings of Rabbi Shneur Zalman in his book called Likutei Amorim, which is commonly called the Tanya, where he teaches that we make a union with Hashem when we draw the body of knowledge that he's given us, which was at the time when Matan Torah, at the time of giving of the Torah, which is the 50th day, the culmination of the period, and we take that information which he has brought down to us, and I decidedly use this word brought down because he moved the wisdom from and enclosed it in a way, taking the content and the essence of Hashem's wisdom, which is united with him, and brought it down and put it into constraining words that we can meditate on and understand, and then bring into detail, and then unify ourselves with Hashem in that way. So the book, the translation of Sefartem, means that we need to connect with Hashem via the Sefer, via the book. And via that book, through its details, through its fullest, to its understanding of the conceptual ideas and the detailed ideas, and we bring it and we connect it to us, to our own soul, to our own thought processes, our speech processes, and then we act on them. And then we join together the writer, which in Hebrew, as someone who writes the Holy Scrolls, is called a Sefer. So we unite the Sefer with the Sefer. A book is called a Sefer. and we've connected via the sipur, via the story, the narrative. So we have three connective points joined together. And that way we join together. Another way, this is another method of unifying godliness within our own souls, with our own thoughts, with our own head. We join them together, and we have as expressed in the Tanya, a yichud niflo, a unique and wondrous unity that joins godliness with ourselves together. And then we have the fourth translation of the word of Sefartem. And that translation is what we mentioned at the beginning, which is the culmination of the teachings that we become at the end point of our service, which is not limited to, that end point is not limited to the ultimate service that we do, because each one of the three previous messages or previous ways that we can connect to God is a way in itself and has its endpoint, because it has its own purposes and shows a path to connect to God. And that is something that it can affect. Each one of those three that we mentioned before affect what we said at the beginning, the creation of the spiritual dwelling place for godliness. But continuing on, so this fourth example that we said, fourth translation that we mentioned, is the idea of brilliance, from the expression Eben Sapir. We utilize that word expression Eben Sapir when we want to talk about a gemstone. Because a gemstone is a tool, a device, and a natural object which looks like something beautiful and it's its own thing, but in its most ultimate sense, a gemstone, not talking about the specific colored gemstone, but why is a gemstone so attractive to us? Because it is something that via its characteristics, it shines as something brilliant. We have in the one explanation about Noah's ark that he used as a light source in the ark. He used a Eben Sapir. That it was a source of light that acted via its brilliance and produced light. So what we're talking about in our case with Sefartem is that we utilize the idea of the stone to shed light, meaning that it is something of brilliance. Now, we know that when we hear a teaching that's taught by something or when someone says something original, and all of a sudden you're struck by its brilliance. You might see a painting and you see the depiction and it's better than the real thing. And there's some talent that the artist has put together, but let's not focus on the talent that the art has, but it's the capability to be able to see something and say, this is something brilliant. This is something which is shedding light, something new. It is something which it's not of itself, but it is not showing itself so much as showing an aspect of brilliance. This is the idea of the Eben Sapir, of the brilliant gemstone. That it's not the idea that it is something for itself. It is something which is shedding, which is showing light. It's not something that wants to emphasize and show off itself. It is showing some sort of capacity which is something beyond self, something above. It is the level of brilliance, to the point where it's somehow so united with the source, the concept, the idea, that everything is overshadowed, and all you see is this mesmerizing light and brilliance. This is the highest level that's embedded in the teaching of Sefartem, that we have to become, that we have the capability, that we should be the level of Sefartem. This is an extent. This is a level of existence where the I doesn't exist. The container of the gemstone it's not taking up the center part of the stage, but it's the light which is shining out of it, which is so brilliant and so mesmerizing, and is so teaching that it becomes like the source of light. This is the idea. This is the idea of the level of unity, of shining and connecting to godliness. An example in the Torah that's given to us with that is that when Moshe Rabbeinu brought down the luchas, brought down the tablets of stone, it says that it was a wondrous miracle that happened with the 10 commandments that were engraved on the stone. What's the difference between writing and engraving? That itself is a sheer teaching in itself, but quickly said, writing is something which is separate, which is ink, which is joined onto parchment, ink which is joined to paper, but it's dissolvable. It can come off, it can separate. But when you engrave letters onto stone, the letters themselves have no entity. The stone itself is reading out the letter to you. The level of unity between the letters, the letter has no formation of itself. The letter is being formed via the stone itself. So everything that's there is the stone. So in the case of the 10 commandments of the luchas, there was God's commandments that were given by, it was the 10 commandments. The first set of luchas was given by God. That was the stone, and the letters were given by Hashem, and they were all one together with the stone itself, so that it took up no entity for itself. So also when you have a brilliant gemstone, the light is what's central. The body that it's encased in, right, is superfluous. It's so united, and all you see is the brilliance of the light. So also, we want to become united with Hashem and show Hashem. With Sefartem, we need to be counted, but counted from the idea, not counted, but being shining examples of godliness in this world, in this physical existence. So our teaching of Sefartem in the 4 expressions that we've used as 4 connective points is a wondrous connection on the idea of teaching, of teaching how we can become examples, and how we can become the light and shining examples, so that we can become living examples of what the Torah wants of us. So when we spoke about at the beginning, and we talked about that each day of the process of Sefartem is not just a preparation to Matan Torah, but it is actually a portion of the Matan Torah. That is because the Torah, in its revelation and in its connecting to us, needs to change us and needs to move us. And we need to become reflections of those 4 different states of connection with godliness on our path to the ultimate receiving of the Torah, but each day becoming a part of the receiving of the Matan Torah. And it's not just, and as we said, it's not just culminating in the 49 days, but this is something that which we need to do on a daily basis, connecting and reconnecting and re-elevating and rededicating ourselves to the highest levels. So this teaches us that this is a process and a capability which we can do, but we need to get energies from that. So now comes how we'll tie in how we spoke, and we formulated a question at the beginning. We have said, Sefartem lechem. We have to become the lochem, that us, the you, right? The you and me, right? The us has to become and has to raise themselves to a stage of becoming Sefartem, of shining examples. But where do we find the capabilities to do that? That's in the next continuation of the verse. We said, Mamochras Shabbos. The Mochras Shabbos, that gives us the capability. What happened Mochras Shabbos? What happened on that Shabbos, on that Yom Tov? In the Pesach time, Hashem revealed himself to the Jewish nation. We relive the process of the going out of Egypt, and we relive the pain, the negativity, but then the emancipation. We relive the energy-giving capabilities of Mamochas Shabbos, the revelation that Hashem revealed, and as it says that at the time of the going out of Egypt, at that time it was revealed Melech Malchei Amlochim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the level which is referred to, the level of spirituality, which is Hashem's kingship, that is his gloriousness and his highest level. He himself, Melech Malchei Amlochim, the King of all kings, and the one who was exalted, which is the translation of that expression, which reflects the highest capabilities of spirituality in this world. That was put into, was given to, and that's the understanding of the Mochras Shabbos. That word Shabbos doesn't mean the seventh day resting day, but means the Yom Tov of Pesach. That gave us, that Yom Tov day gave us, the Yom Tov itself, the revelations, the godliness that God did at that time, that he revealed himself, he himself, which is called Shabbos. And we use the expression of Shabbos, Menucha Lachai Elomim. The day of Shabbos is the day of spiritual rest for of the day, which gives life to all the worlds. What does it mean, give life to the worlds? That he gives us the capability, the koyach, the strength to be able to do the inyan of Sefira, the idea of the Sefira counting as its simplest translation, and all the other translations and all the other levels which we translated and spoke about. And he also gave us within the bracha of the Torah, the blessing of the Torah, in its presence tense, in the blessings for the 50th day, so that we'll be able to come and do it on an everyday basis, and gives us the capabilities to the Jewish nation as a whole, and every individual as a whole. Because when we count the Jewish nation, we count them as individuals, we count them as a group, and we count them as individuals, as the Torah speaks about the times when there was a census. There's the Bnei Israel, the group, and there's the individual census where everybody counts, and everybody's counted, and everybody's joined together, and everybody's united, and everyone is given this capability. As it says, when the Jews went out of Egypt, men, women, and children, we are all given that capability and the constraints that are embedded in the world, such that spirituality can't exist in the physical plane. That's all been broken through by virtue of the giving of the Torah at Har Sinai. The constraints of joining the spiritual realm to the physical realm have broken through, to the point where Hashem was the one who did it himself, because he came down to Mount Sinai, meaning that Hashem rested on Mount Sinai, and he did by doing that capability of affecting the world. Because when Hashem came down on the world, it's as it says that there was a cloud and smoke which is an indication, which in its allegorical sense means that Hashem affected and showed a physical effect, that the world has changed, the world has moved on to the point where we can be capable of changing and breaking through the realms of spirit affecting physicality, and physicality drawing to all its positives and adding to the spiritual world. And we do that through learning the Torah and acting in that way of joining with Hashem in the four methods that we've discussed through the processes of Sefartem. And then we will be able to have a Matan Torah, a spiritual Matan Torah, a spiritual reception of godliness, and we'll be able to accept the Torah, and we'll be able to accept the Torah in a way of joy, and a way that it'll affect ourselves internally. And with that, we conclude our today's teaching in relationship to the idea of Sefartem, but we have moved it into a way that it can have a practical outcome, so that we ourselves change and move along and move ahead in our own practical observance. So with that, I wish you good blessings and good achievements of being able to fulfill everything we've said. So everything that we've above mentioned has a direct connective point to the idea of the Kabbalistic ideas of the sphere.